Welcome to Surrender School.
All right. So we're going to open this up for shares, and I want to talk for a second about what exactly we're talking about here. Does anybody want to talk about what we meant by willingness? Because in the video we talked about this made a list of people we had harmed, and of course in the video I suggest you already should have a list from step 4, hopefully a short list, not 150,000 pages, but a short list of that. Have I harmed them? You talk to somebody and say, okay, and then you become willing to make amends. So that's what this thing is about, being willing to make amends. And it's just the idea of willingness, not the same thing as wanting, right? We talked about wanting is like, oh, I'm delighted to do that. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being willing to. Now, before I do this, I'm going to I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do next, just so that you know. So there's a section in another video where it talks about tied to the lie, right? What would you replace the lie with, which was the wrap-up challenge. I am willing to do more stuff on the lie and more discussion on that if people would rather talk about that. So we'll talk about willingness right now, but then I have the slides for each of the different types, that basically what is the lie they live under, and then and that's the next section I'm going to cover. So if there's not a lot of talk about willingness, we'll move right on to that. But instead of going through all of them, I'm going to have you tell me, I'm a type 2, I'd like to look at that. I'm a type 7, I'd like to look at that. And that way we're covering just the ones that are there. But for right now, I'm going to take the video down. I'm going to take the PowerPoint down and see if anybody wants to share on willingness or anything that they learned from doing their assignment. Thank you. Okay, so one of the things that happens, so we talk about the body type, which is the 8, 9, and 1 at the top, right? Their base emotion, the one that underlies everything, is anger. And the 2, 3, 4, what underlies theirs is shame. And the 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, what underlies there is fear. So I want to come back. The third in that group, so I'll talk about the one at the top first, right? 1 expresses, so the 8 expresses anger, that underlying emotion. The 9 basically ignores that there is such a thing. The 1 represses. And what you resist persists. So what happens with the 2, 3, and 4, the 4 is the third in that group. They will absolutely deny, repress. It is push down, push down, push down. What you resist persists. And so it erupts. That's what happens with the 1. You would never think a 1 is angry, but there's this roiling anger underneath. And the same thing with the 4, there's that roiling anger that's underneath, or that roiling shame that is underneath, that you spent your lifetime denying that you feel that, right? And I think somewhere mixed up in that, I'm guessing, somewhere mixed up in that repression of that whole, I am going to deny that exists, there is this need to be special, and your resistance to wanting to be treated special is tied up in that somehow. It's all wrinkled together in that somehow, right? And so that's something to look at, because today we're looking at the shadow, which is the side that we do not want to see. That is beyond embarrassing, beyond whatever it is. That is absolutely don't want to see it. What I found interesting in my readings is that those that have like a positive outlook don't want to look at what's called the negative side of things. That's in their shadow. But for the ones that are oriented the other direction, what's in their shadow are the good things. They don't see the good things in themselves, right? And I think that's just fascinating to me, that we all have shadows, but depending upon how we address the world, right, there's different things that are in our shadow. So anyway, but I think the idea that of those 3, there's even more organization than there seems to be, and that third one in each of the triads is the one that basically represses whatever that is. And in your case, it would be shame for a 4. Awesome. Yeah, that's just part of taking care of yourself, right? Which, yeah, you have a 9 wing also, and nine wings usually don't take care of themselves. So I want to say, I'm going to talk about willingness here for a second, because I watched the video and I was like, I wonder why I didn't, because I said my holy work would be walking every day and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's really weird. Why didn't I do that? Because I didn't at all. I haven't changed at all. All right. But I also realized, and the only reason I know this is because during the video, I quoted May 26th from For Today, and I looked down and said, oh, it is May 26th. And that week was the week that my brother-in-law went into the hospital, and I was driving my sister to the hospital, and then he passed away, and it was like all this stuff. So I can't wait to watch the other videos to see, because I truly, from there on, don't even remember what I talked about. Right? My mind was completely someplace else. So I'm hoping they're still good. I don't know. Anyway, but it's really amazing because I looked at that and went, I wonder why I didn't do that. But there wasn't that, oh, I'm a piece of shit. Even then, there wasn't that. But now I realize, oh, okay, I see why that happened. Right now, my life is back somewhat to normal. So let's see if we can pick that back up again. Um, so it's the weirdest thing because I don't think that I mean, I feel like do you guys even get how different that is than how I was in the past? Oh my God, I could beat myself up every single second of the day for every single thing that happened. Like everything was my fault. I swear, is this is the way it felt. And Ty, you talked about, right, that you could smile and not be angry. Oh no, eights, there is no hiding it, right? My husband used to say, when Cheryl ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? So I mean, it's like I just laid it out there for everybody. Like I owed them my opinion. Now this was when I was, in my 20s and maybe 30s, I don't know, whatever. Somewhere along the line that stopped because I was trying to climb in corporate, and you can't climb if you act like that, right? So I toned it down, I suppose. But it still creeped up. It still did that. But now to this idea of forgiving myself for being human is a new concept, a relatively new concept for me. Maybe it isn't for you, but maybe it is for you, or maybe you're not even there yet, where you can say, oh, I'm human. And the Enneagram allows me to say, I'm wired that way. Nobody else acts like this. Why do I act like this? Or why do I want to act like this, even if I don't act like this, right? Why do I want to? Or why does that crop up? I have that pause now, thank God for that. The pause that basically says, stop. Okay, will this serve me or them? Will it hurt someone? Right? There's a pause. But even the fact that it's there for me to pause over, right, is because I'm wired that way. Regardless of whether anybody else is wired that way, I am wired that way. And therefore, I'm getting a chance to see those things. So I'm starting to look at my shadow. That is not fun. That's heavy duty work. So anyway, okay. Thank you for letting me share that. So in their heart, they know that they are unique. So this is a 4. In their heart, they know that they are unique. And very often it's like, I want people to understand that I'm unique, right? The cognitive, so that's the heart, that's the feeling, right? The cognitive is that they identify too much with their emotional states. And in the moment, not just generally, but in the moment, they really do not see that this too shall pass. So today, everything we're talking about, whether you identify that or not, is about something called change. So change could be coins in your pocket, right? Change also could be I'm working on something to change. And then change could be something that just happens. It does, right? It's the only constant in the world is change. Everything changes all the time. Things disintegrate, things grow, everything changes. So the idea behind this, right, is what happens with the 4, their cognitive error is in that moment, they do not realize, that's the shadow part. They don't realize this too shall pass. This will change. And so, and doesn't it completely make sense why they cling to that, why they're holding on, even if it sucks, they hold on to it because it's like, what do we even know is going to, if it were to change, what would it change to? Right? So there's all of that kind of tied into that. I do not have a link to the 4 as an 8, 4, 3, and 6. I have no link to them at all. The others I do, but those 3 I don't. And so mine is all my comments on this is about reading and observing, not living it. Right. But I think that for some reason maybe it's because I'm a thinker by nature, but it's like for some reason this cognitive error just really, really hits me. It really, I'm like, the fact that they identify with their emotional states. What's interesting in the emotional sobriety book, what Ellen Berger says is that emotional sobriety is realizing that our emotions are no longer are the facts that drive our life. They are emotions. And I picture it like I'm on a bridge and the emotions pass underneath. They are real. You feel them. They're just not necessarily true, right? They're real. So you need to acknowledge them, But if you cling to them like they are the truth, then right, truth with a capital T, you're screwed pretty much, right? So the idea here is emotional sobriety says that I can view this and know that it is emotion and know that it will pass and not let it govern my life. That is like I've just done the sermon that is like all these things colliding together into one thing. And from and I mean all of us have this to a degree, but four certainly more so. All right, so that is the coverage of the four. And then I can do the same thing with the other ones. And I know we've seen this before. We will see it again because these two things, the way I feel and then the way I think about it, that is the passion and then the fixation, the story I'm telling myself, right? So if I tie this to the fixation and the passion and the passion is that ego structure builds up for the four. The ego structure builds up and says, I am unique and God damn it, people need to know that even if they don't treat me special, they need to know that I'm unique and I have these special feelings and I'm having all this, right? And then the story we tell ourselves is that, right, is the idea that this emotional state is reality. And either I'm afraid I'm always going to live in it, or I'm afraid I'm never going to capture it again. It's like all of that, because this sense, that understanding that everything changes, everything evolves, that is almost too soft, something too elusive or something for the four. So those, and once again, it ties to passion and fixation, and we're always on that kind of continuum between them, is basically just the idea that there are things that we don't even see. And now in the middle of this study, we're starting to see what we didn't see. We're starting to see what we have disowned. We completely in the past have disowned it. I don't own that at all. I don't even see that I'm like that. And one of the examples that I gave, you all know that Joy and I are friends, and I said something to her like, well, I don't do that. And she's like, you might want to look at that. I mean, I had no idea that I ever did that. And it was in absolutely in my, I don't remember what it was, but it was like completely in my shadow going, oh, okay, I guess I do sometimes do that. And once again, I love in that book that we were reading the last time we went through this, she talks about do it in a percentage, because it's not, I do it, I don't do it. It's not that. It's like I do it 82% of the time when I'm in my 20s. And then suddenly I'm now seeing it and I go, well, I don't do it much, but every once in a while that does creep up, right? Now, and once again, I want to talk for a second. The passion is in essence, I mean, I'm really like boiling this down, is that ego structure that I believe is me, that personality that I believe is me until we start studying the Enneagram. That is basically where the passion shows up. And the passion is what's caused my suffering. So the story that you tell, Deborah, where you're like, I don't know if I should say anything. Do I be quiet about it? What do I do? That really is, that's tied to your passion because it's causing you suffering. And that's really what passion means in this context. Passion is what has caused my suffering. Now, for fours, especially sexual fours, sexual sixes, and eights, it causes other people suffering too, because they have to put up with it. So there's lots of suffering going on. Okay, so that causes suffering. The fixation is the story we tell ourselves to make that passion appropriate. So it absolutely is tied to the shadow because we don't even see that that's what we're doing. We don't even know that's what we're doing. We're telling ourselves a story, right? Like my story as an 8 would be, you have every right to be angry. You, of course you can, anyone would be angry. That's the fixation. That's the story I'm telling myself to make that okay. And it's never really okay, right? My bad behavior is never okay, but I make it okay because I have to live with myself. That's what the fixation is. And so, and I'll tell you, when I sponsor people, I tell them, if you're going to come to me, and I mean, I'm a mean sponsor, by the way. I'm not mean, but I'm anyway. If so, somebody's like this, like this, right? Okay, and I say, okay, if you're going to complain about your past life, that's what you're going to do. Is you're going to sit and you're going to complain about your past life. I'm going to tell you this. I I don't allow people to whine about their past. I just don't, because it's completely fruitless. Why would you do that? No. Now, maybe there was pain, maybe even horrible, right? But the fact that you're doing that is a story you're telling yourself. Can you tell that same story without any adjectives at all? And I had the fours do that in one of the exercises, right? Can you say, don't use words like horrible and dreadful and, get rid of all those adjectives. Can you just tell the story, what happened, right? And sometimes it's horrible shit that happens. Somebody got hit by a car, right? Remove all the adjectives and tell me the facts, whatever the facts are. And if you can do that, then what happens is you can remove as much as possible, remove the emotion from it, and let's look at the story. Because so much of it, everything in our life is a story that we are telling ourselves. That's what gets us. And that's why that's in the shadow, because we believe the story. We need to believe the story because we are trying to make ourselves all right. We're trying to make ourselves okay, even when the behavior has not been okay. Right? It's like, I mean, and all of this is so human. This is completely human. So there's no reason to feel like, oh, I can't believe I do that. Everybody does that. It's the way we live our life. But if you want a full and rich life of service, right? Seeking God, of service, living clean, you want to live like that, then I want to see that shadow, even if it's uncomfortable, right? Which is the reason I brought up the comfort, because I used to think I had to feel comfortable if something was wrong, right? Well, no, it's not wrong. That's called life. Life has just uncomfortable moments. And I need to deal with those uncomfortable moments and not fall into whatever it is that my Enneagram type pattern is, to not fall into that. Okay, but the peace that nines bring, because the cognitive error for the nine is that peace of mind by they believe that they bring to themselves and others peace of mind by disengaging from the situation, from reality, from their instincts. Um, if all nines disappeared from the world, there would be no peace, none. There would be no place of peace, because the nines bring peace. They just do. So I love having nines in my life because I long for peace. I mean, I'm a crazy person who, right? My life is like, I'm nuts. But if I can have nines in my life, it's like they center me. They help me reach that part of myself that is not a natural part for me to reach. Cognitive error for the two is your value is based on seeing positive response from other people. The twos pretty much are the only people that can, um, twos will smile in discomfort, will smile. They're suffering and they are smiling, right? And and once again, when Shirley and happy and nobody happy, so what is that, right? What is that? And that is a two, because and once again, because they want to have no needs, they want to be the one that gives instead of receives. And once again, I'm simplifying it big time. And that comes from the fact that their value of themselves is tied to someone else's opinion of them, which is one of the reasons they're with people all the time, because and the nines view themselves as not mattering, and the twos view themselves as not present. They're not even there if there's not somebody there giving them some kind of feedback, right? So I think I don't think it's so much, Maria, I don't think it's so much like I'm different types. And I do think it does have to do with shadow, and it does have to do with not seeing yourself. But I do think that a lot of it is more time, a bit of time alone, so that you can figure out what it is that is you, that, right? And Joy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you share a bit about, because I know, I mean, I've known you for what, 8 years now. And so I've seen such growth in you. And a lot of it has to do with Enneagram, certainly has to do with recovery, has to do with surrender school. This is one of my favorite slides ever. Human beings stand in the rubble of former beliefs. And once again, I love the concept and the metaphor of the fact that the beliefs are not as strong as they used to be, but they're still there. It's rubble, but they're still there. And we will begin to build the house again if we don't replace that with something else. So I think that this is just so meaningful to me, and hopefully to you as well. And so the other thing I want to talk about is, all right, everything that I have, I use this in the video, everything that I've ever released has claw marks on it, right? I don't like to release things. I don't like to let anything go. So many of us are like that for different reasons by the different types. One thing I sent in WhatsApp that I want to think about, okay, I'm going to give you a minute to actually, maybe my minute is different than other people's minutes, probably 20 seconds, but here is a belief that persists in all of us for different reasons. And that is, I can and must be different than what I am to be acceptable. I can and must be different from what I am to be acceptable. For me, I have to be quieter. I have to be less angry. I have to be fill in the blank. For a two, I have to be less, right, less giving with the hook or whatever. For the four, I have to be less emotional. There's also something that says I need to be different than what I am to be acceptable. Can you think of just an area that you need to be different to be acceptable? And I want to alter this to basically say, as what you're really saying is, I can and must change to be acceptable. And what you're really saying is, I must change myself to be acceptable. I must change myself to be acceptable. If we look at this and say, no, 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 wait a minute, change happens regardless. When I talk about the fact, right, I talk about the fact, you notice that this is the little Chinese handcuffs, the little finger handcuffs. The more you pull, the more you, right, it gets stuck. That's what change feels like. We do not change ourselves. Our higher power changes us. So as you do things differently, your higher power will change you. So I want you to think of change differently than I'm changing myself. And this is, eights are so much do, people, right? Right. But what I'm doing is trying to change myself instead of just do things differently. Just choose to do things differently. You do one thing differently. And so really, what does that look like? Rather than I want to change, fill in the blank, whatever it is that you think will make you acceptable, just one thing I'm going to do differently. Not because this is where that whole change thing all gets kind of confused, I think. Right. So I talk about the fact that we have work that we are doing, and that's where we're doing that one thing differently. I'm going to add meditation. I'm going to do a prayer every day. I'm going to do some reading that's good for me, that's basically is spiritually based. I'm going to read an Enneagram book. I'm going to watch an Enneagram video. I'm doing something different. And what's happening is God is changing us. That is the way it works. And we, I think, have that, I'll call it a little bit backwards, because somehow we feel like we have to change ourselves. And that isn't the way it works. This is new to me. I'm an eight, right? Everything is in my control. Everything I'm changing. And you know what? Change never lasts, ever. It doesn't last. The only time that happens is when I just do something differently, and then my higher power changes me. So that's what I want everybody to discuss. I know this is like new. I just plopped it on your heads. So share, please. I must be doing that a lot lately. But the idea here is, what can you do differently to allow your higher power to help you change or to change you, right? As opposed to that thinking that I must change. Maybe you guys don't feel like you must change. I spend my life feeling that I must change, right? So right. And even though I'm a doer, it never dawned on me that I just have to do something differently. I just have to do it differently. And my higher power will change me in the direction that I'm supposed to change, to be the spiritual person I'm intended to be. Nothing seems that relaxed historically in my life, everything, right? That's the claw marks, right? I cling to the things I love and I push away the things I don't. They end up in my shadow. I don't even know they're there. And now I'm just like, okay, all right. And I want to add something to that, because with the nines, sometimes what will happen, right, is they'll say, I wish I was different. I wish I was different than this. I wish I didn't stress out about that. I wish I didn't fight stepping forward. I wish all that. But the beauty of this is, what this says is, don't wish that. That is a part of your journey. And the fact that even with those feelings, you will still step forward and you will still be of service, and you will still, that's all part of the beauty of being a nine, right? So I'm here in a minute, I'm going to cover, it's from Michael Naylor again, and it's just, oh my God, it's like the beauty of the raw beauty of each of the types. And we'll wrap up with these love notes to ourselves. How's that? It's an invitation to abundance for each of the types. Okay, for the nine. The nine is the peacemaker and also the gentle mystic. It is an invitation to bring peace and healing into our world. That's what basically the Enneagram invites you to do. Bring peace and healing into our world. Remember that it is your true nature to be an inexhaustible font of serenity, acceptance, and vitality into the world. So nines are awesome. I love that. Okay, so let's go to the one. One is the reformer, or the merciful teacher, as Michael Naylor calls it. You are invited to live for a higher purpose. Remember that it is your true nature to be wise, discerning, and patient. So that true self is wise, discerning, and patient. All right, for the 2, they are the helper, also known as the intuitive healer. They're invited to nurture, you are invited to nurture ourselves and others. Remember that it is your true nature to be good to yourself and to have goodwill and compassion for others. For the 3, they are known as the achiever and also the they're the inspiring champion. You are invited, so 3s, if we have 3s, you are invited to develop ourselves and set an example for others. Remember that it is your true nature to take pleasure in your existence and to esteem and value others. For the 4, the individualist, which is also the creative alchemist, your invitation is to let go of the past and be renewed by our experience. Remember that it is your true nature to be forgiving and to use everything in your life for growth and renewal. Everything in your life for growth and renewal. For the 5, they're known as the investigator or also the kind wizard. They're invited to observe ourselves and others without judgment or expectations. Remember that it is your true nature to be engaged with reality, contemplating the infinite riches of the world. For the 6, they're known as the loyalist, the loyalist or the courageous pathfinder. They are invited to have faith in ourselves and trust in the goodness of life. Remember that it is your true nature to be courageous and capable of dealing with life under all conditions. Dealing with life under all conditions. You can do that. The 7 is the enthusiast, also known as the joyful visionary. There, you are invited to joyously celebrate existence and share our happiness. Remember that it is your true nature to be happy and add to the richness of experience for everyone, to add richness to our experiences, to everybody else. And for the 8, known as the challenger or the lion-hearted protector, your invitation is to stand up for ourselves and to speak out for what we believe. Remember that it is your true nature to be strong and capable of affecting your world with compassion and humility. That is in Michael's handouts, which is on Surrender School. If you go out to the handouts that are there, this is one of the handouts that are there. I have to say, it was so funny because I read this and I thought it's really easy for me to speak out for what I believe. It's very easy for me to stand up for myself. But he's not saying that this is hard. This is almost like the opposite of what the challenge that I give, right? And so somehow I take for granted the fact that I will stand up for myself. But he's like, that's good. That's part of the beauty of being that for the 9, right? For the 9 to bring peace and healing. That's part of what they are. They just will be that. So when you relax into your true self, you are that. So Dave, what you were saying earlier, I don't have to try to be strong. I am strong. I am courageous. I am that, right? I don't have to try to be anything anymore because I am that. And so this is an invitation for you to use those things that are you, that you have because of the perspective that you have in life. All right. We are open for, I skipped somebody that wanted to share. Melissa, I think that was you. If you want to share now. And please feel free to share on this. I just think this is just awesome. Obviously I'm a fan of Michael Naylor's. I'm like a fangirl. I'm never a fangirl of anybody, but I must be of him. So, okay, go ahead. This is one of the things too. It's almost like this thing that I just read is what everybody had us put a lid on because it, right, at least for the 8, right? This idea that I stand up for myself, I speak like that, right? That was the thing that everybody had me put a lid on. And now I realize, right, through program, because it's softened, right? There is appropriate and inappropriate, and recognizing what's appropriate for the time and place. For me, the growth came from realizing that I didn't owe the world my opinion and eventually didn't even have an opinion on most things. That's why it's like, so when Joy told the story about, I asked her, do you have a cough drop? And then she goes, looks for a cough drop. In her mind, goes and looks for a cough drop. When you ask an 8, if I'm listening to what's going on and you ask an 8, I will say no, even if I have one, because I'm listening. God damn it. And you don't interrupt me. I'm busy. Right? So I don't go inside my head and try to think where I'm going to get you a cough drop. I don't give a fuck about your cough drop. Shut up. I'm listening. So, and I infer that all with one word, no. Right? Anyway, and it's okay. It's okay. So note to self or note to you. If you're sitting next to me and we're studying something, don't interrupt me. And the beauty of this, I think, for me is if you are focused on, because we're learning about ourselves, and if my focus is on myself, so in the end, it's about me 100%, then I'm not, that's like studying your belly button. They used to talk about that, but it isn't. It's about so that I can love myself and show up in the world with compassion and love. That is really what it's about, is to be able to show up as myself and love and be loved. And it's all about that. And it has to start with self-acceptance. And it's so funny because with most of you, that's probably not news. To me, this is news. This is brand new. This is like, wow. So I've been in program 21 years now, and probably the last 2.5 years is when this started to dawn on me. The rest of the time, I really believed if I hated myself enough, I would change. I would be better. If I hated myself enough, I would recover. So the mantras, basically in the first video, I think I introduced the mantras, and then people adopt the one that is their type, and then from there they change it. So I'm going to guess whatever type you are, if this resonates with you, you're going to figure out that there's a mantra that is probably similar to that. I'm going to guess, because that's usually what happens. It speaks to us, and that's almost how we know what type we are. So Michael Naylor says that you take a test to kind of point you in the right direction, but then you discover on your own what type you are. Because very often how we show up in the world is not the way we're wired. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't, and we learn that.
Thanks for recovering with us.